This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 55. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. Before we get started, let's talk about our sponsor, Kimber Firearms. Kimber was founded with the singular purpose of making every firearm the best it can possibly be, with a fit and finish that only practiced hands can achieve and appreciate. Whether you carry a Kimber for personal protection, hunting, or competition, know that their promise of quality without compromise is how they measure success. To learn more about Kimber Firearms, visit kimberamerica.com. In today's episode, I talk about the crazy, mixed-up world of policing in 2020 with Suzi Huntington. Suzi's a retired San Diego cop, a former editor of American Cop magazine, and a fixture in the firearms industry alongside her husband, former Guns Magazine publisher Roy Huntington. Suzi's always plain-spoken about her opinions, and today we cover why the Defund the Police movement gained such traction, her thoughts on BLM and Antifa, and she shares words of wisdom to our active police officers who are facing the onslaught every day. Now here's our discussion of law enforcement in 2020 and beyond with Suzi Huntington. Well, good evening, Suzi.
Good evening, Brent.
Well, Suzi, thanks for joining us. You are the better half, shall we say, of the Huntington and Huntington duo. Your husband is my former boss and the former publisher of Guns Magazine, Roy Huntington. You've got certainly quite a resume yourself. So the main thing we're going to talk about is law enforcement and where law enforcement stands in our society right now. We're both retired cops, and we've all got pretty strong feelings about the way things are going. But when I was thinking about interviewing somebody that would really tell it like it is, the first person that came to mind was Suzi Huntington.
Okay, so wait a minute. First of all, I'm not sure that we would call me the better half.
Oh.
When I started out in the industry, my business card said editor's wife.
Oh, wow.
That's how I got into booths.
Wow. That's funny. But you have been. You've been a cop, a big city cop. You've done a bunch of stuff there. You've been editor of American Cop magazine. You've been to Africa. You have done a little bit of everything in the shooting industry. Let's start with, the cop thing first. Tell us a little bit about that side of your career.
All right. I was hired in 1985. Mid-'80s, rad chick with a flat top, eventually. That might have caused a few problems. And I worked 23 years. So hired in 85, was policeman until 2008. And then we got the heck out of California.
No doubt. And you've done a little bit of everything. Talk about some of your different assignments there.
Worked patrol through most of my first few years. Ended up working pretty cushy job, if you will, on the beach. I got to, first of all, one of my first assignments out of training was, my beat was in La Jolla. So.
Been to La Jolla, it's incredible.
It's beautiful. And it's pretty hoity-toity, but people there, especially the old money, very nice people, very supportive of law enforcement, enjoyed it immensely. Got to go on some fabulous home tours because on alarm calls, of course, I'd be inside looking around saying, wow, I could live like this.
Yeah.
From there, I also got to work on the beach enforcement team, which...
really?
Yeah.
Is that even a job?
It is. It's actually a really busy job because I think what is the first holiday of summer? Memorial Day to Labor Day. Mm-hmm. You pretty much have no life.
Really?
It's party call to party call. Drunks, transients, gangsters now trying to claim the beach as their territory.
It doesn't sound like Baywatch.
It's not even close. But then I spent the majority of my career working in traffic division. In traffic division, I had several different positions within there. Worked a crash car And so we were responsible for handling all the fatals and felonies throughout the city of San Diego. Worked on a serious traffic offender program, better known as STOP team. Our whole day revolved around unlicensed and suspended drivers. And then from there, I worked on the commercial enforcement unit. And I was lovingly referred to on the CB radio as the trucker. You're going to have to bleep this.
Oh, really?
Yes. I wasn't really well liked, which is kind of ironic because I usually was on the side of the truckers.
Well, after you retired, like you said, you and Roy moved to your beautiful home in the rural southwest Missouri. And along the way, you ended up being the editor of American Cop magazine. Now, you were also noted for your rather straightforward editorials.
Well, somebody has to speak the truth. And I'm not saying that people don't speak the truth, but Roy's always been a bit more tactful than I have. Of course, he does throw me under the bus an awful lot as being, well, I think his favorite saying is, don't get Suzi mad.
What was it about, what attracted you, especially as a female, into law enforcement?
Well, first of all, my first husband, the ex-little mister, was in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed, as a wide-eyed, bushy-tailed 19-year-old, it seemed like a really cool job. You're outside. No day is ever the same. There's nothing in your in basket. You're not some paper pusher.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of what got me interested in it. And I was athletic. I was fit. I felt, hey, if he can do it, I can do it too.
I am Suzi. Hear me roar.
Sure. But there were the underlying reasons of getting into it. Like, I want to help people. I want to put bad people in jail. All those things certainly played into it. But did I say from the time I was a little kid, gee, I want to grow up to be a policeman? No. It was sort of a, he can do it. I can do it. Looks like fun. I'll go try.
Well, cool. What were some of the challenges of being a female?
Well, okay. So when were you hired? When did you come into law enforcement?
85.
Same time as me.
Yeah.
All right. So figure this. Most of the administrators at that time had been hired in probably at least the 60s.
Yeah.
Maybe earlier than that. And so what was the culture when they were baby officers and going through the whole promotion process?
It was not woke.
No. Women were supposed to be secretaries and, be cute and fluffy and all that. So when I came on, the administrators were still very much old school. Most of those older people came in at a different time, and their mindset never changed.
Yeah.
So early years, pretty rough. You, as a female, often found yourself in the crosshairs.
Wow.
Or being accused of only getting something because of...
You're a woman.
Exactly.
Using your natural advantages as a woman. So,
well, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to, close off my feminine guiles. I'll bat my eyelashes to get something if it's going to get me something.
See, you're straightforward. That's what we like about you.
But it got easier, I think, for women as time has passed. I think there's always in the back of people's minds, well, she's a girl, so she's not as strong. And in many respects, yes, I can't deny physiology. Yes, we are in many ways weaker, but we also tend to go into things a little bit calmer. Mm-hmm. So we might be able to talk somebody down versus having to get in a fight.
You're not burdened by testosterone in a 35-year-old man's body. I must kill everything.
But I was never afraid to get into a fight.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say, I don't see you.
It's that extra Y chromosome.
No doubt. Well, you're pretty straightforward in your opinion. So let's just get there right now. What in the hell is going on in America today regarding law enforcement? I mean, it's like we've stepped through the looking glass and some people, I don't even think the majority of people, but some people just think law enforcement needs to go away.
Well, yes, it's this 8-tentacled octopus right now. I think it's been a long time coming. Now, when you and I got hired, mortality rates for officers were very high.
Yeah.
And so the pendulum, if you will, was not in law enforcement's favor. As time went by and we got into having the better mindset of officer safety and we need to be more proactive and aggressive, the pendulum started to swing to the middle, and then it went in our favor because we were on the ball.
Yeah.
It's swung back horribly in the other direction. And I agree with you. It's not everybody who thinks these things, but you know the saying, the squeaky wheel gets oiled.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the loudmouth minority thinkers out there are the ones who are creating most of the hate and discontent right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antifa. Thank you, BLM.
And we'll get there in just a moment. Now, do you think law enforcement has played a part in this, or is there something we maybe should have done in the past that maybe we're getting some payback now, or not?
No, I don't think so. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that all cops are perfect. And they're drawn from the human race, right? Mm-hmm. We go through background checks. Can background checks catch everybody? No, they can't. Just like we can't catch everybody who's a bad guy. So we are drawn from the general public, and we come with all of our baggage and weird ideas. So yeah, we are going to have some bad apples. Guy I used to work with on my squad turned out to be a serial rapist.
Wow.
So a CHP officer was making traffic stops on women and then making sexual advances, and ultimately one fought back and he threw her off of a bridge. So these things happen, but we are a slice of the human race. So I don't think there's really anything that we as law enforcement in total have done to create this situation. I think it's just, it's a bigger societal problem.
So let's go down that road. What are the factors that have caused this?
I think we've made too many bad guys victims. You know, it's the victimology of, well, he did this because he, came from a dysfunctional family, or he was raised in foster care. And so even though a diminished capacity is not supposed to be a defense, we've gone there. Yeah. And diminished capacity seems to be, everybody has a diminished capacity at some level, if you think about it. I mean,
I'm a gun writer. That should say it right there.
I think many people, too, have been painting officers with very broad brushes, that all of us come from dysfunctional families, that we are all, on ego trips and just want to tell people what to do. So I'm not sure. It's like I said, it's many, many different things. And I think the more credibility we give to the naysayers, the more power they've received.
I look at Minneapolis and their city council. I look at Portland and their mayor and their city council. Can you even wrap your head around what these people are thinking?
No, I can't. The comments they're making about defunding police are so out there. When you consider, all right, so you want non-sworn people without guns, without any form of protection to go out and handle calls that normally police officers are sent on. So what happens then when that non-sworn person gets injured or killed, even for that matter? Who are they going to call then?
Yeah.
Because you don't have police anymore. Who are you going to call? Even the idea of non-sworn people handling traffic citations is really out there. I don't think people realize that a significant number of complaints come in as a result of a traffic stop, and traffic stops can really go south fast.
Yeah, a significant portion of officers killed every year are on what are they? Traffic stops.
Routine traffic stops.
Yeah, exactly. For minor traffic violations. The person you're stopping, it may be grandmother who just rolled through a stop sign, or it may be a guy that just killed his entire family. And it literally happens that way.
It does. And so there's no thought. It is a guttural knee-jerk reaction to an isolated incident. And I know I've been beat up on Facebook for saying that was an isolated incident. And actually, I've tried to share with people that are my quote unquote friends, try to explain it from the standpoint of law enforcement, just to kind of put a little bit of sanity in their brains. But it hasn't worked out really well. It's not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Because again, we're making the person who created that whole incident the victim. I absolutely guarantee you this. None of those officers in Minneapolis got up that morning and said, I'm going to go kill me a minority.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. The two junior officers, oh my gosh, I'm in training. What am I supposed to do? It's for them, that was the Kobayashi Maru of law enforcement.
Yeah.
There was no winning.
Yep.
And so when you look at the totality of what happened, it all goes back to Floyd. That's not saying I support everything that the officers did.
Right.
And there's a huge difference between I am just blindly backing law enforcement to what the other side is presenting.
Yeah.
There's a whole world in between those two extremes.
You mean a complex dynamic situation and we're trying to turn it black and white? That never happens.
I know. Never.
Looking at especially social media, what do you think's the most common thing that people don't seem to get or understand about cops and law enforcement?
They don't understand that we are just like they are. We get up every day. We have our own set of problems. We have our own families, our own lives. We come from the same backgrounds that many of them come from. We just have a different job.
Yeah.
It's a job. We are human beings. I think in many ways, the things they are accusing us of treating them as is reciprocated. And oftentimes, I think it's instigated on that side. Can't tell you the number of times that I would be sitting in a restaurant trying to eat, just be by myself, get some paperwork done, and somebody would come in and make a snide comment, or they would tell their kid, hey, don't act up or the cop's going to come get you.
Yep.
So there's from a very early age, some people are essentially taught that we're the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, in their value system, since they're scumbags, I guess we are the bad guys to some extent.
I used to think I should be a fireman instead. Everybody loves the firemen.
Exactly. America's second responders. Oh.
Scene destroyers.
And all my fireman friends out there, I love you. Come on, it's okay. We've had this rivalry since, the dawn of time, so it's just fine. And I know you guys tell jokes about us too. So what do you think about BLM? What I don't understand is it's terrible and horrible and racist to say blue lives matter, but we can certainly embrace and paint on the street that black lives matter. So I'm seeing a disconnect there. What's your thoughts on that?
Huge disconnect. It's not okay even to counter with all lives matter. You're still called a racist idiot for it, and I don't understand that. No one person's culture or any other protected class, nobody is better than somebody else. And so when we give BLM credibility that somehow their lives are more important, and I'm not taking away any of the history, but I think it's really gone in a very strange direction. I think, yes, it's great that you want to promote your culture, your race, your whatever. Great. But it doesn't make you any better than anybody else. And I think many people at this point look at me, I'm one of them. I'm tired of having my nose rubbed in what people did in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just erase it. All right? History is history. Good, bad, and ugly. So don't ask me any more questions about BLM because I can really get kind of wound up on it.
I actually am going to ask you something, though, is what were your thoughts when you saw, this was back in like maybe May when this was all getting hot and spun up. There was a couple instances where like high law enforcement officials would hold foot washing ceremonies with the local BLM leaders and demonstrating their penance, I guess, for being cops or whatever it was. How'd that make you feel?
I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for officers out there. What was that all about? Is it a publicity stunt?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. Washing some guy's feet. It's not biblical times where we need to sit and wash Jesus's feet, okay? But I don't know. I really don't know what the right answer is. People keep saying, well, you ought to do this, and this is the fix, and problem is that it's a multi-tentacled problem. And it's not going to be solved with any one particular thing. And it took us a while to get here. It's going to take us a while to dig ourselves back out.
Yeah.
I think what everybody needs to do is take a big old chill pill and start over.
Yeah. What do you say when you talk to your cop friends? Because we both still got a lot of friends on the job, and
pretty much the same thing. Just go out there, do the best job you can. I know that most officers, that's what they actually say in the morning or at the beginning of shift is they're all about helping people and doing the right thing and getting bad guys off of the street. That's what it's all about for them. And I think they just need to keep marching forward on it. None of this is going to change anytime soon. I almost feel like we've gone back to the 80s when mortality rates were spiking. There's been way too many officers getting killed. And it's scary. I'm actually really, really glad that I am not in law enforcement anymore.
I've said the exact same thing.
There's not enough money in the world for me to go back into that.
Yeah. I've actually had the nightmare where they call me back into work. I had it the other night, and it was the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. I wouldn't answer that call.
Yeah.
It's totally different. I would say, even going back to my younger days, I think what's going on now for me seems worse than it was when I got into law enforcement.
Where do you see this all playing out? You think it's just a pendulum thing and we're just going to have to wait it out? Or do you think the new administration is going to throw kerosene on this fire?
Yeah. Well, but that's if the new administration actually happens.
I'll grant you that.
So yes, if the new administration happens, yes, I think there's a strong possibility kerosene is going to be thrown on the fire. And that's, for me, a very scary idea.
You know, another big topic of late is if we do get the new administration, they've made it pretty clear, at the very least, they're anti-gun. At the very most, they are full on, we're coming for your guns and we're taking them. You know, they can't do it alone. They need law enforcement and or the military. What are your thoughts? You think that's going to happen?
I think it could. And here's why. They have families to feed. They have mortgages to pay for. They have all those things that most people have. And some people will not be strong enough to thumb their nose at the order because they're afraid of losing their house. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of not being able to feed their family. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. But I think there are enough other people who took their oath when they were hired to heart. So it's going to be both. You're going to see both.
And it's going to be ugly, I'm afraid. That's my fear.
I think it will be ugly, but I also know that there are enough people who are just sick and tired of being sick and tired who will not be afraid to say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Come get it, Sparky.
Well, I think there's a big misunderstanding among a lot of folks that you see a lot of quote unquote police chiefs that are anti-gun, whereas elected sheriffs tend not to be. Explain why people see that and why there's that difference a lot of times.
Well, a sheriff is an elected official. All right. So the people have chosen who their top law enforcement leader is. Chiefs, on the other hand, are at the whim of whatever form of government is running their city. So there's a vested interest in keeping their jobs. And so if the city officials have XYZ as their platform, well, then by golly, as a chief, you better follow along. So kind of goes back to that thing of if the law enforcement officers were given the order to take guns away, well, why do you think the chiefs stay in line with the city government?
Yep.
It's because their job is at stake. But some of them actually do firmly believe that, nobody should be armed but law enforcement and military.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you see cops occasionally that feel that way. And I always tell them, you're not going to be a cop forever. So just think about that, even though there's Leo.
And here's one step further. Maybe they'd like to go to Australia and be law enforcement there, where they have to check their guns in and out every day.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Well, anything else you can think of we haven't hit on?
Well, you were going to ask me about how I felt about Biden.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Push the beep button. just hold it down.
Well, Suzi, I gotta prime the pump going out. So I don't think Joe Biden and his team are listening to our podcast, but there's the slightest chance you might be able to speak directly through our microphones to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all that. What would you like to tell them?
Should I use little words that they can understand?
You can use any words you want.
Let's see. What would I tell them? Get a grip. Get a grip. Put down the gas can. Don't continue to light this fire.
Yeah.
Or I should say, stoke the fire. They're so adamant about trampling on constitutional right. It scares me. It's appalling. I also think this. Call me a conspiracy theorist on this particular thing. I think that Biden is the red herring, and I think this is all in an effort to get Kamala into that presidency.
Yeah.
And my thought on that is, that's the best female we could present.
Yep.
Whether she's white, black, Asian, purple with pink polka dots.
Yeah.
Come on. That's the best you guys brought us?
I'm just hoping that half this country wakes up in about 3 or 4 years and goes, we did this just because we were mad at the orange guy. Wow, we were kind of dumb, weren't we?
Everybody assumes that if you're not on Biden's side, that you are a card-carrying idiot Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And I have always said from the moment he was elected originally that the man needs finishing school. He is rough.
And his Twitter shut down.
Yes. But for me, and I think for many other people who voted for him, the other choice was a deal breaker.
Absolutely. And that's what they didn't understand about Hillary. She was just a rotten, awful candidate. And that's why she got smoked. So
deal breaker.
A deal breaker. Exactly. And now here we are worrying about whether we're even going to be allowed to own lawfully owned weapons that are currently good, today. So, but anyway, going back to law enforcement and closing out, a lot of our listeners are law enforcement officers. Why don't you tell them one last thought? Keep
marching forward. Keep your head held high. Keep doing your jobs to the best of your abilities, and have the honor of your profession. And it's a bit like telling your kids who are being bullied, just turn the other cheek. They got to keep turning the other cheek, because this will come out in the wash. It will. We just need to be patient, but extremely vigilant, because it's so dangerous out there right now.
Wonderful words from an expert, Suzi Huntington. Well, thanks for joining us.
Okay, Brent.
It was great catching up with Suzi, and I'll be waiting to see when the cancel culture mob gets a hold of this podcast and tries to get it banned for not following the approved law enforcement narrative. And with that, we hope you're enjoying the Guns Magazine podcast. Please tell all your friends, even those gun-banning liberals. Guns Magazine is #1 in the business, and we're using our decades of friendships to bring you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got questions, comments, or a guest you'd like to recommend for the show, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you don't miss out on anything by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast directory and YouTube. Of course, you can always listen and download our episodes at gunsmagazine.com, and while you're at it, don't forget to check out our sister publication, American Handgunner Magazine, at americanhandgunner.com. Even better, it's not a bad idea to support firearms journalism by subscribing to one or both of our print magazines. And finally, I'd like to remind you to check out our sponsor and friend, Kimber Firearms, at kimberamerica.com. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast for the entire staff at FMG Publications. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.